Hello, Year 12, and welcome to your Monday lesson and the introduction of your NEA, which, as you can see, stands for Non-Exam Assessment. In other less fancy words, coursework. Now, the coursework aspect of the course is a wonderful addition to the A-level because it provides this great buffer going into the Year 13 exam. It provides a 20% buffer so that you enter that exam knowing that you already have in the bag a really solid foundation. Now, this is something completely new for you. You, of course, sat the new GCSEs and did not have any controlled assessment, any coursework. So you should really take this opportunity, take it running, and really work hard over the summer now that we have this space to make sure that you get as much of this coursework finished, finalised, polished as possible. Now, you need to be aware exactly what the coursework is, and this Monday's lesson is going to run you through step by step. So grab your pad, grab your pen, what the NEA, the NEA entails. Okay, so let's start with the very easy reality that you will need to create 2 pieces of coursework. Now, what I really like about this is there's a true logic in the mark scheme for this coursework. The mark scheme for your 2 pieces of coursework is exactly the same, word for word, mark for mark, band for band, as the exam, as the essays, the assessments that you have been penning for me since the beginning of the course. So both of those essays will be marked out of 25, as per usual, which will give you a total collected mark for your coursework package of out of 50. And of course, that translates to a grade. I am never happy until I see coursework, at least a C or above, and really a very strong class that you are. We are aiming for A's and A stars for our coursework, okay? And I have plenty of models from over the few years that we have been doing this of exactly that, A and A star coursework. Now, as I mentioned at the start there, together, out of 50, they make up 20% of your overall grade. So that's 40% in your paper 1, tragedy, and that's 40% in your paper 2, social and political protest. So 40 plus 40 is 80, plus 20 for your coursework gives you the rounded 100% grade. There you have it, an English teacher doing some clear, simple maths. Who would have seen it? So, what exactly, I hear you asking in your internal monologue, are those 2 bits of coursework? What can I do? Will you tell me what to do? No, I will tell you what the expectations are, but the NEA is a largely independent aspect of this course. You get not the burden, but the freedom of choosing which ism, which lens you would like to look through, whether that be feminism or Marxism, eco-criticism or post-colonialism, and you get to choose the text that you look at. As long as it is worthy, as long as it is literary, as long as it has enough weight and length to it, you get to choose. And I've had just such wonderful choices over the years. Okay, some of you might choose the same, some of you might not. I will never teach a coursework text. Some schools choose to select a text that all of their pupils will write an essay on, and I find that far too limiting. For me, I like to facilitate the great independence of this task. So, 2 responses about a different literary text. So, 2 responses, 2 different texts. Now, you should be writing this down, but I want to reiterate this. do you remember when we started the course and I took you through the theory component? We looked at feminism, post-colonialism, eco-criticism and Marxism. And with my wonderful photocopying that you all took the mick out of, I photocopied for you the parts of the critical anthology where the exam board have basically run through for you what those theories are and what they're concerned with. So you should all have those in your folders anyway, but I will give you an online link to the critical anthology in full. It's now time to dust it off and start revisiting those theories. What are they and which two am I most passionate about? Now, this is extremely important and we cannot afford to waste time and get this wrong. One of your responses must be a conventional essay style. So exactly like you are used to penning a standard essay of 1,500 words or roundabout on a text of your choice. Okay, one has to be an essay. However, if you're the type of person that likes a little bit more freedom in your creative expression, then you might choose your second piece to either be recreative or a more journalistic EMAG style. And I will be providing you with this lesson attached on Edulink 4 different examples of coursework. One is a standard essay, one is a standard essay but written in more of a journalistic style, like an EMAG, and 2 are recreative pieces. And I'll run through what they are in a moment. So, in summary so far, 2 responses on 2 different isms on 2 different texts. You must make sure that each of those responses, that one of them is a traditional essay, but the other, if you like, you don't have to, can be more of a journalistic piece or more of a piece of creative writing. Now, this is straight from AQA. Now, they have since said, even though they've said the word count for each response is 1,250 to 1,500 words, though that word count doesn't include quotations at all, and I would say no one ever is giving me a piece of coursework that is less than 1,500 words. It can be 10% above. There is some leeway. It's up to me and my discretion. But we never send me an essay and say, Miss, here's my first draft, if it's less than 1,500 words. You will actually put it this way. If you care about this piece, find that you struggle to keep the word limit down. Okay, so the last thing to say, and this is equally important, is that when you choose the 2 texts that you'd like to explore in your coursework, one has to be a collection of poetry and the other has to be prose, so a novel. So 1 collection of poetry and 1 novel. Now I will provide for you some inspiration, some lists for that, so don't panic. But there are some kind of quite common choices that people go for each year. The only texts that you can't do are those that are actually studied by pupils across the country for AQA at A level. So obviously we can't choose the Kite Runner or the Handmaid's Tale, and we can't look at Songs of Innocence and Experience, okay? We also can't look at, I can't remember an example that other schools study off the top of my head. Nothing wants to arrive in my brain. I'll give you the list. There's basically a banned text list, okay, that we cannot study for coursework, even if we don't actually study it ourselves. It doesn't matter if any pupil across the country studies it for AQA on this A-level course, then we can't use it in our coursework. Okay, people are usually fine with that, but I've got a banned list for you. Okay, so what should you choose? Text choice. Now, whatever you choose, it has to be substantial. Okay, so a poetry text can either be a long narrative poem Okay, and it has to be significant in size. They have said that something like Goblin Market by Christina Rossetti isn't long enough just by itself. So to give you a kind of ballpark, that itself isn't long enough. It would have to be like an epic poem. Yeah, an epic poem, many pages long. Or it could just be a collection of poetry by a poet. So it could be Caroline Duffy's The World's Wife. Someone usually chooses that every single year. Or it could be Wilfred Owen's war poetry. Okay, but it has to be a single author and their collection of poems. It can't be a collection of different poems from different authors, like a mixed collection. A single authored collection for your poems. Okay, now if you want to do a collection of short stories, then it has to be that. It has to be a collection of short stories. You'd have to read the whole collection and choose a couple of the short stories to explore in your essay. But you have to show proof that you've read the whole collection. Okay? So just be careful there. Most people just choose the standard, a single authored collection of poems, and then a standard novel size. Okay? No one has actually done a collection of short stories before. But if you're really passionate about it, then we'll have a look. But you do need to read the whole thing. So that's what I was just saying. So for the recreative task, basically what that means is you will take an author's work, let's say Pride and Prejudice, because this is one of the examples I gave in your pack. Okay, so the novel Pride and Prejudice, and you might read that and go, there is actually, for me as a reader, a moment I would have loved to have heard more about. Or maybe there is a character in that text that I feel isn't given, as much of the narrative to them. And I could actually write a chapter from their perspective. Quite often people that do the recreative piece choose to find a gap in the text, okay? And they create that gap through their own writing after having been quite heavily influenced by the author's work themselves. Now, with a recreative piece, it's not just I'm going to do some creative writing. You have to also accompany that recreative piece with a small written kind of justification of your work. Okay, so you write a small essay basically that explores the reasons for your choices, your language, structure and form, and what you were trying to communicate through your creative piece. Now, obviously, you'd have to coincide, this is why the recreative piece is quite tricky, it with one of the isms as well. So for the Pride and Prejudice one, the people chose to write a letter from one of the characters that would have been within the narrative with a consideration of Marxist ideas and social class. So you'll see in the example and what she discusses in her justification for what she did. Text and translation are allowed, so text that's been translated into English can be used, so that's not ruled out. Often students don't use them, but I have had one last year do that. That's fine. Okay, so let me, before I go further, recap one more time. Your coursework is 20% of the course. For your coursework pack, you produce 2 pieces. One will be a standard essay, and one might also be a standard essay, or it could be a recreative piece or a more journalistic article, like the e-magazine styles I've dished out in lessons before. Either way, you must explore one collection of poetry and one novel or collection of short stories. You must show that you have read either the collection or the novel in full, okay, that you've read the whole thing. Okay, both pieces are out of 25, giving you a mark of out of 50, and therefore 20% of the exam, which is a beautiful buffer. The critical anthology is key, because when you write up your coursework, you will be making reference to the critical anthology. Now, I have made for you an action plan. And in that action plan, it takes you through step by step how to plan for your coursework. Because to be honest, Year 12, 80% of doing coursework is planning rigorously, reading the text, annotating the text, creating your plan, doing your wider reading. And then of course the last 20% is writing the thing. Okay, but you do not start writing until your action plan is created for both of your responses. And you have reread the critical anthology for the sections that you would like to look at. If that's feminism, you'll look at that. If it's Marxism, you'll look at that as well. Or you might choose eco-criticism, and then your second one might be feminism, or you might choose Marxism, and your second one might be post-colonialism. Whichever two isms you choose, you have to engage back again with the critical anthology. So those are your 4 choices. There are 2 other choices in the critical anthology, but actually we're not going to look at those as a school. I've always looked at those 4 as my core, and we have done very well indeed on coursework. So let me just tell you in your example packs which one you have. So just put them in front of you now, or up on the screen in Word, and just make sure that you write on them, whether you type or you write if you've printed them, that the Sylvia Plath essay is your conventional standard essay style response. Okay, and you can see the question that's been created there. We'll talk about creating questions later on. Okay, so a standard essay, and you can see the bibliography word count at the end. Okay, she came up with that question working with me, and she made sure that her answer was within the word limit and that she had evenly covered the assessment objectives in the mark scheme. The second example I've given you is the Robinson Crusoe one, which is the one that looks a bit more colourful, has some pictures on it, and that is still technically a conventional response, by the way, but it's just written in more of a journalistic style. We call it literary journalism. So you want to write down that that is your conventional EMAG literary journalistic example. Okay, really like that one. I think if I was a pupil, I would choose to do one of those because I just really like having a bit more flair within my language and my expression. And as you know, essays can sometimes be, well, they are hyper formal. Okay, but the EMAG style is just a little bit more fun, a little bit more full of your voice and your personality. So the recreative piece with its commentary is your Pride and Prejudice and the Brave New World examples. I gave you 2 of those examples just because I think that's the hardest one to get your head around, but it allows you to explore the text of your choice in just a little bit more a creative way. Okay, so you're still critically reading the text, but what you create is informed by working with the critical anthology. So you're looking for maybe a gap or an absence, something that's lacking in the text that you chose, and you would fill in those gaps with your own writing to shed new light on potential meanings, okay, through a different lens. You don't have to kind of copy or replicate the style of the original text, but the pupils that I felt did it really well did do just that in their examples. Okay, you'll see the style they wrote it in very much captured the style of the original primary text. It has to, however, as I said before, whatever creative writing you do has to be accompanied with a commentary where you explain and explore your choices and how they connect to the original text and the critical anthology. Okay, either way, the word count is going to be split over the 2 pieces. So you're not going to write like double the amount. You might write half on the, the creative piece and then half for your commentary, or it might be you write a little bit more in your recreative piece and then a little bit less in your commentary, but it needs to largely be even. Okay, you'll see what I mean when you actually look at the examples. Okay, So let me move through this. Literary text, I'm going to provide for you a list, so don't worry about that. But what I need you to do today, okay, now that you've listened to me waffle on enough, you might even need to listen again if it's not going in, just to recharge and recap. But for today, for the rest of the lesson, what I really need you to do is to, number one, this is not on the slide, so just listen to me. Number one, look at the examples that I've given you. Okay, and I want you to try to come to a decision as to whether your second piece of coursework, is it just going to be another essay? No problem with that whatsoever, if that's your style. Or are you going to try an EMAG style, a journalistic piece? Or are you going to go for it and do the recreative? Try and decide what your two pieces will be, but you know one has to be a standard essay. I want you to dust off your critical anthology. I want you to go back over the isms, feminism, Marxism, post-colonialism, and eco-criticism. And I want you to decide which two you'd like to do. Which two really resonate with you. So that's the second decision to make. The third decision is a little bit harder. And that is you today going online, doing some research. Which texts do I want to do? Now, you might not decide today. Okay, there's no pressure for you to decide today, but there's certainly pressure for you to start researching. Okay, if one of your lenses is feminism and you'd like to do a collection of poetry for that, then which authors are you going to select as your kind of top 5? Do some research on them and then have a little look and see which really reaches out to you. Now, it has to be said that when you think you've decided your plan, which two types of essays you want to do, which two isms you want to do, and which two texts you want to do, I need an email. Because I need to check that you've understood this information here, that you have chosen wisely and you've chosen correctly. And I appreciate it's a lot to get your head around. So all I want you to do after you've made your notes on what the NEA is I want you to go ahead and decide 3 things. Number 1, what 2 types of responses am I going to do? Number 2, what 2 isms am I going to do? And 3, what texts am I going to do? And I'm going to send with this a list of potential options for you to look at. Okay, so those are the 3 decisions by the end of the day. Please, please, please also read over the examples I've given you, because they might have some wonderful inspiration in there, and you're free to choose those texts as well if you like the sound of them, by the way. Okay, you can do the same ones, okay, that people did previous years, and you can do the same one as your friend might be doing, but you need to have different questions. Okay, now we're not going to even start to think about your question yet until you've made some key decisions and you've decided upon your text. Okay, so that is all for today. I will also attach the action plan just for you to start having a look at it. You don't really need to fill anything in just yet for today's lesson, but I'll give you everything, okay, including this PowerPoint here as well. Okay, any questions, please email me. I'm always just an email away. Thank you very much, Year 12. Happy hunting.